My friends, we often speak of God's blessings as if they always come wrapped in joy, peace, and beauty. But what of the blessings that come wrapped in silence, in loss, in the quiet disappearance of someone who once held your heart hostage? You see, when God separates you from a narcissist, it is not a punishment. It is a divine rescue mission. When someone is removed from your life, especially a person who once consumed so much of your emotional energy, it can feel like a punishment, a betrayal by fate, or a hole torn into the fabric of your story. But in God's divine wisdom, separation is often the first act of healing. It's not vengeance, it's mercy. You see, God does not remove people casually, especially those you've deeply connected to, those who seemed necessary to your journey. Yet when a person's presence becomes more harmful than holy, more draining than divine, God intervenes not with thunder or lightning, but with quiet separation. It doesn't always feel like deliverance. At first it feels like loss, like confusion. You replay conversations, analyze what went wrong, and wonder if it was something you did. But the truth is, God saw the depths of that connection more clearly than you ever could. He saw the manipulation behind the charm, the control behind the kindness, the pride cloaked in flattery. You only saw glimpses, shadows. He saw the full spiritual structure behind the mask. And because he loves you, he did what only a loving father would do. He broke the bond before it could break you. To be separated from a narcissist is to be removed from a relationship that was slowly, subtly, spiritually killing you. Not always with loud arguments or bruised faces, but with isolation, with manipulation, with the quiet erosion of your identity and purpose. God's hand doesn't always show up with fanfare. Sometimes he just lets the text go unanswered. The call never comes back. The door closes without explanation, and in that silence he is speaking loudest. Asterisk. That chapter is over. I'm saving you from what you were willing to endure but not designed to carry. Asterisk. The wound of separation may sting at first, but soon the air feels lighter, the confusion lifts, your prayers begin to sound different. That's when you begin to realize the thing you thought was a loss was actually liberation. The absence is filled with God's presence, and you finally understand what felt like rejection was God's redirection. What looked like a heartbreak was actually heaven's shield. God didn't take something asterisk from asterisk you. He removed what was standing asterisk between asterisk you and the life he always intended for you. After a narcissist is removed from your life, it's natural to wonder whether they miss you, whether they feel the weight of your absence. But the truth is much more sobering than our emotions often want to admit. A narcissist doesn't miss people the way emotionally healthy individuals do. They don't sit in sorrow reflecting on shared moments with genuine remorse or longing. Instead, they mourn the loss of control, attention, and dominance. You were never just a person to them. You were a source of supply, a reflection of their superiority, and a pawn in their emotional game. Their thoughts after the separation aren't filled with guilt or sadness. They're focused on strategizing. How can they reclaim the attention they lost? How can they twist the narrative to make themselves look like the victim? How can they ensure that you or others still think of them, still react to them, still revolve around their presence even from a distance? The separation isn't about a lost relationship. It's about a lost platform, a lost puppet, a lost mirror. In truth, the narcissist's grief isn't about losing asterisk you asterisk. It's about losing what asterisk you gave them asterisk. Admiration, attention, and obedience. They miss the stage you provided for their performance. They miss the echo chamber that validated their ego. But the real you, your soul, your pain, your worth, was never their concern. That's the tragedy and the freedom. For so long, you may have confused their obsession with love, their control with care. But now, from the outside, you begin to see it for what it was. This is why God had to step in, because your heart would have stayed trying to fix, trying to understand, trying to love them into healing. But narcissists don't change through your effort. They change only when confronted by truth, and even then, most resist it. God knew that your desire to stay would cost your peace, your clarity, your calling. So he removed you not to hurt you, but to heal you. What the narcissist really thinks about you now is filtered through a lens of pride and entitlement. They think of you as the one who got away, and not because of love, but because they no longer have the ability to shape your reality. That, to them, is the true loss. In a relationship with a narcissist, you often believe you're being loved, seen and valued. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to feel hollow. Not because you lack worth, but because your worth is being siphoned off to support someone else's illusion. A narcissist doesn't look at you as an individual with dreams, emotions, and depth. They see you as a mirror, something that reflects back to them the image they want to believe about themselves. When you praise them, agree with them, obey them, or admire them, they feel powerful. But the moment you challenge their authority, express your own needs, or stop reflecting the version of them they've built, the relationship begins to crack. You weren't loved for who you were. You were valuable only in so far as you supported their narrative. When you smiled on command, nodded on cue, and gave them attention at their convenience, you were the one. But when your humanity began to surface, when your soul cried out for reciprocity or truth, they began to see you not as a person, but as a broken mirror, a faulty tool. And to a narcissist, anything that doesn't serve their self-image is either discarded or destroyed. This is why so many people leave narcissistic relationships feeling like they lost themselves. Because in many ways they did. They were slowly conditioned to suppress their voice, their needs, their identity, all to keep the narcissist pleased. And when they finally step away or are removed by God's mercy, they're left with a haunting emptiness, a fog that takes time to lift. But the truth is, what was lost wasn't ***. It was the version of you that was crafted for someone else's comfort. And while that version was applauded and validated, it was never truly ***. When God separates you from a narcissist, it's a holy act of restoration. He breaks the mirror, not to leave you shattered, but to stop the illusion. He knows you were made for more than being someone else's reflection. You were made to shine with your own light, to love with your own heart, to walk in your own identity. No longer used, no longer silenced, no longer shaped to fit someone else's ego. This is the beginning of your true becoming. When God separates you from someone toxic, especially a narcissist, it's easy to focus only on the pain of what has ended. The silence feels loud. The absence becomes a daily ache. You may ask yourself why it had to happen, or if it was the right choice. But the truth is, God never removes without a purpose. He doesn't just pull you away from harm. He pulls you toward healing, toward calling, toward your true identity. What we often interpret as rejection is, in fact, a redirection to something far greater than what we were clinging to. You see, God is not only in the business of rescue. He is also in the business of recreation. The moment He separates you, He begins restoring the parts of you that were damaged, buried, or denied. A narcissistic relationship slowly rewrites your sense of self. It causes you to question your worth, second, guess your decisions, and live for the approval of someone who never truly saw you. In removing you from that environment, God is setting the stage for a deep, personal transformation, not just of your circumstances, but of your spirit. It may not feel like movement at first. It may feel like being stuck in unfamiliar territory. But like a seed planted in darkness, your life is not buried. It's being prepared to bloom. God doesn't just free you from the hands of someone manipulative. He places you into a season where you begin to see your reflection clearly again, without distortion. He gives you new vision, fresh strength, and a voice you thought you lost. What was once centered around surviving that relationship slowly shifts to thriving in your purpose. Every step away from a narcissist is a step toward your divine assignment. The peace that begins to return is not just relief. It's evidence that you are aligning with God's design. In that stillness, He speaks louder. In the emptiness, He fills you with something better. And in the loss, He plants the seeds of a legacy that never could have grown in poisoned soil. So while it may have felt like everything was falling apart, in reality, everything was being rearranged, not just away from danger, but toward your destiny. That is the quiet, powerful beauty of God's redirection. After leaving a narcissistic relationship, one of the greatest temptations is to look back. You wonder what they're doing, what they're saying about you, and whether they ever think of you with regret. This curiosity is deeply human, especially when you've invested so much of yourself in the connection. But this is where spiritual clarity becomes crucial. God did not deliver you from bondage so you could keep checking on your captor. You are not meant to be the historian of someone else's dysfunction. Your job is not to record their reactions or write their redemption. That is God's domain, not yours. Every time you look back, you risk reopening wounds God has started to heal. The desire to understand what they think, whether they suffer, or if they've changed, often masks a deeper need for validation, something they never truly gave you. But their thoughts now are not your concern. In fact, most of their thinking revolves around preserving their image, not processing truth. If they do talk about you, it's rarely honest. It's carefully curated to keep them in the center of the story. They may twist events, shift blame, or even feign sadness, not because they truly miss you, but because they need an audience. By continuing to monitor their behavior or seek meaning in their silence, you unintentionally tether yourself to the very cycle God worked to free you from. He didn't just want you out of the relationship. He wanted you out of the emotional prison. He wants your focus forward, your energy poured into healing, growing, and becoming. God is writing a new story in you, and it requires your full attention. Not divided glances toward a past that could never offer the love or security you longed for. Letting go of the role of historian is an act of trust. It's saying, Lord, I don't need to understand their thoughts. I only need to follow your voice. It's recognizing that your worth is not confirmed by their regret, nor your growth validated by their awareness. What God has ahead for you is far greater than what you left behind. And if you keep looking backward, you might miss the blessings right in front of you. True freedom is when their story no longer controls your attention, your emotions, or your future. When you walk away from a narcissist, especially after a long and emotionally draining relationship, the world might not always applaud you. In fact, the narcissist may label your escape as weakness, cowardice, or betrayal. They might even convince others that you gave up too easily or that you were the problem all along. But heaven sees the truth. What looked like a silent exit to the world was, in reality, one of the strongest acts you could have made. It takes enormous strength to walk away from someone who has trained you to doubt your own voice. Leaving a narcissist is not just about physical distance. It's about reclaiming your soul. The manipulation runs deep, often convincing you that you are nothing without them, that your life is tied to their validation. To break free from that emotional grip requires not only courage but faith. It means trusting that your identity does not depend on their approval. It means facing loneliness, uncertainty, and even grief, with the hope that peace will eventually follow. And it will. Heaven does not measure strength the way the world does. It doesn't always look like bold declarations or dramatic battles. Sometimes it looks like quiet resolve, like packing your things while trembling, like choosing silence instead of one more fight, like saying no more, even when your heart still aches for closure. These are not signs of weakness. They are sacred markers of courage. The narcissist may believe you're lost without them, but God knows you're finally being found. You are rediscovering your voice, your worth, your vision. That's the power of divine separation. It opens the door to restoration. And as you begin to heal, you'll see that what once felt like defeat was actually your moment of breakthrough. You didn't run away, you rose up. Heaven witnessed the silent battles, the unseen tears, and the countless nights you begged for change. And when you finally walked away, all of heaven called it victory. You chose truth over illusion, freedom over fear. That strength the narcissist will never understand, because it's not based on control, but on surrender, a God's will to your healing, and to a future no longer held hostage by someone else's brokenness.